we're going to be installing all of these parts here on this table in front of us. So let's walk around this tractor together, and I'm going to show you why this is the best protected tractor that you can currently get for any kind of woods application. Now, tractor manufacturers do not design their equipment to work in the woods. They design them to work like this in a field, right? But you buy this tractor, you want to increase the amount of land you have or their yard, you want to clear a spot to build a house, you want to be putting a grapple on this, using it in and around the woods. It needs better protection. So that's where we come in. So this is our fuel tank cover. This cover mounts up here at the step. It'll also mount to the bottom to where our skid plate is. We make a full skid plate for the bottom of this tractor. This cover comes around the back side, bottom side, and front side for protection. Now this is outfitted with our ITC saw boss, which is a chainsaw carrier. So you can drop your chainsaw into it and have a good, sturdy, secure spot to keep your chainsaw fully lined in HDPE, quick release, so you can take this pin out, you can take the chainsaw carrier off, you can take our toolbox kit, put the toolbox in its place. So with that on there, you've got a good spot to keep your chainsaw. Down here, we've got a engine protection plate, so we've got a guard over here, protect against the engine from any kind of like sticks or debris getting up and smacking the side of that. There's another cover down here. There's a hydraulic return line right there, so that is something that we cover because it's just a rubber line that connects two metal lines together, and it's very prone to getting split. If we come around this way, there we go. The front of this tractor, we've got our extended brush screen insert. This brush screen goes above the factory guard. You see the guard stops right here. We've got these flanges on the side to give this the strength that it needs to actually protect the headlights up here. If we keep coming around, down here on this side, we've got our right side engine protection plate. And then we've got our hydraulic valve cover. Now, if you know this tractor, you know how open and exposed that is. If you don't know this tractor, it's really open and exposed. You've got a filter sitting right here, hanging out in the open. Your hydraulic valve for all of these connections, as well as your third function, that's all down there and very exposed. So with this cover, we're able to kind of wrap all that up. Again, this cover mounts into our skid plate that's underneath the tractor. Now, this tractor doesn't have one on it, so I'm not going to bring it and show it to you. But we do have a skid plate for it. So the cover will also mount to the skid plate, and it gives you a really strong and secure kind of guard for the hydraulics. Hey guys, I'm Jake with ITC, and today I've got a 2025 TYM T574, and we're going to be installing all of these parts here on this table in front of us. So I'm going to work through these parts and tell you what they are. And then we're going to work on assembling and then installing them on the tractors. So we start down here. These three components make up our fuel tank cover. This is our ITC saw boss. So we'll be installing this on the loader mount. The loader mount is actually already installed on the tractor. We have a protection plate for a rubber hydraulic return line that is really prone to getting damaged. I'll show you that a little bit closer. This is our 574 extended brush screen. So this goes above the top of the factory guard to give you more protection for your headlights. Down here, we've got one of our engine side covers. This is the driver side engine side cover. The passenger side one is on the other side of the tractor. We'll show you that when we get over there. And then lastly, all of these pieces make up the hydraulic valve cover. Now, there's a couple different configuration options on all of these parts. We'll walk through that, what you need and what you don't need, as we go to do the install on the tractor. So this tractor is not going to be getting a skid plate, but essentially it's going to be getting a total loadout besides the skid plate. The end customer for this tractor does not want the skid plate. I don't know if they're going to have a backhoe going on in the future and they know it's not compatible, or if that's just not something they're interested in. But I will talk you through how to install the skid plate. It is relatively easy, and I can kind of point to a few things and show you how that goes in and goes together. But the primary focus is going to be on the outside of the tractor, not under the tractor. So this should be a fun video, and I get to install these parts, so we'll kind of get right into it. We're going to start off with the fuel tank cover. So I'll get the hardware out and the tools, and I'll let you know what tools we're using as we're using them. And in the description, there'll be a list of all of the tools we use for this. So this is 3 pieces. It used to be 2 pieces, but now we've changed a few things around. It's now a 3-piece design. You will have a bag of hardware that comes in the box. Since these items came right out of the shop and didn't come out of a box, we're just using some of our bulk supplies because we're going to be using a bunch of this hardware in this video. So you have a top piece, kind of a middle piece, and then your base. So this is how these are going to get assembled. And we'll just run through and get the bolts in, and we'll go ahead and get those in and tighten down. And then these 3 bolts here will line up with the step bolts on the tractor. So once we get this all assembled, we'll go ahead and we'll pull the step off of the tractor, and then I'll show you kind of how I like to line all this up and get those bolts back in, because it can be a little bit of a pain. So these bolts can go either outside in or inside out. It doesn't matter. I personally like the aesthetics of the outside in, so that's how I'm going to install it. But if you wanted to install it the other way, you are more than welcome to do so. Since it'll probably be a little bit boring to watch me sit here and install all of these bolts, we'll keep the camera rolling, but we're going to go ahead and speed this up so you don't have to painfully watch me put in every single one of these bolts. Now that the bottom is installed, these 2 pieces are fully bolted together. We're going to repeat the same exact process just with the top part of this. Now this fuel tank cover is fully assembled. Now it's all one big piece. Now these holes down here on the bottom, there's going to be 2 of them, right here and right here. If you do not have our skid plate, those holes are not going to go to anything. So they're designed to integrate in with the skid plate. Just know that if you do have a backhoe, you cannot run the skid plate and the backhoe at the same time, unfortunately. The 2 of them just don't play nice together. And we're gonna install this cover. Right before we install it, what I'll do is I'll kind of walk you through how we install the skid plate, because the skid plate would be the first item going in if it was going on this tractor. So you need to do the skid plate before you do the fuel tank cover. All right, so we're over here at the fuel tank. We're going to pull this step off and get this out of our way. Once we get that out of our way, we'll be able to see in there a little bit better. And I'll also be able to show you how the skid plate goes in. But this is a 14 millimeter socket. And I put this on a long extension. It makes it substantially easier to use. With our step off and out of the way, I'm going to take a second just to talk you through the skid plate install. So the skid plates slide in between the tires in here, and they go below this fuel tank support, but they go up on top of these loader framing supports. So you put the rear skid plate in first. It's marked rear right in the skid plate. It's cut right out of it. So you'll slide that in, and you want to make sure that when you're laying underneath the tractor looking at it, you can read the word rear. So there's some welded nuts. Those nuts will go on the top side of the skid plate, not down on the bottom. So the rear skid plate's going to slide into the front position, and then you'll slide the skid plate back on top of this tubing, and then you'll slide the front skid plate in front of it. Once you have the skid plates in, you can get the hangers or the Z brackets that we have to actually secure the skid plate in place. Throw those on it, get your bolts started, just don't tighten anything down. You'll want to wait until you get both your side covers on, then you have a little bit of room to kind of move things around and get it all to line up and drop together. So that's how the skid plate goes in. It's really simple. It's really not a big deal, and it only takes about 10 minutes to put it in or take it out. Now the fuel tank cover, now that we have this, so it's a little tricky kind of holding this, because it's heavy, holding this up in place also while trying to put the step back on. So the way that I like to do it is I'll sit on the ground, I'll slide on here underneath here a little bit more, and then I'm going to use my knees underneath this fuel tank cover to help hold it up in the air for me to get those bolts started in. So the cover will hang there while you get situated, which is very nice. And I'm going to take out 2 of these bolts and we'll put those in after. So now I usually have a little trick where I'll use a piece of cardboard or a piece of paper, and I'll shove it in my socket to prevent this bolt from going all the way in there, just to get just a little bit more thread engagement available on this. But I don't think I have anything. What do we got there? Oh, we got one? Perfect. He brought one that's already been shoved full of cardboard. So we're going to swap out this socket for my cardboard loaded socket. And all that that's going to do is it stops this bolt from sliding down in there all of the way. So when you push it into the socket, it just will go essentially to the end of the nut and not go down, or the end of the hex head and not go down all the way. And that'll help when it comes to trying to reach those threads with all of these pieces that you're holding on to. I'm going to take a little bit out of there. Or alternatively, stick your cardboard out the side, and then when you put the bolt in there, it'll be tight and it'll likely not fall. So we'll set this up, make sure this is the correct direction. We'll get this up and into place. And kind of all at the same time, I'm going to use my knee and this, and I'm going to go for the center. So we'll get that to slide in. And I can feel that we're into the threads. So once that one's started, I'm going to get the other one started. So the step's got to move a little bit that way, and the fuel tank cover's got to go. There we go. Now this fuel tank cover is slotted. So these mounting bolts up here are slotted. And the reason is TYM changed a few things between their early model 24s and their late model 24 tractors. And it requires a little bit of adjustability in order to fit. So the torque spec on these bolts, let's talk about that for a minute. So TYM does not give you a torque spec for these bolts. And if you call them and ask, what they'll tell you to do is to find what the bolt is and then reference the generic spec of that bolt. In this case, with these bolts, it is 50 foot-pounds. So you won't find that in your manual, but I talked with one of the dealers that we work with, and that was their recommendation, was to use the spec for the bolt itself. So 50 foot-pounds on these. Once you get everything in, your step is good and solid. This cover is then in place and is nice and solid. And you've got your protection from the front, obviously the side, the bottom, and then this protection here in the back, so this tire can't throw things into that fuel tank. So we'll move on from this and go talk about this over here. So if you have a TYM T494 or T574, you need to know about this. So if we zoom down in here and we take a look at this, down in here is a little rubber boot that connects these two metal lines. Now that is a hydraulic return line, and it is very prone to splitting and getting damaged, and is very, very easy to lose a lot of oil really fast. And there's a very simple solution for that. So we have this bracket that we make that just bolts in right here. So you pull those two bolts out, this bracket goes right in there into place, and then that hose is pretty well protected. So we're going to install this, but we're also going to be installing our engine side cover for this as well. So here is our engine side cover. So we're going to install this on the same two mounting locations plus the one bolt in front of it. So we'll get this in first. We'll get the front bolts in, and we'll get the two back bolts in place. Then we're going to tighten the front bolt to hold it in place. We'll take our two back bolts out, so this one and this one, take those out, and then we'll reinstall them with this cover. For this, we're going to need a couple different size sockets. We have a 19 millimeter and a 21 millimeter. So the 19 is going to be for these ones back here, while the 21 is going to be for this bigger one up front. Now these bolts are tight, as they should be, and I should have brought a longer ratchet, but I didn't. For those not experienced with this sort of thing, you can pull harder than you can push. So if you're in a situation where you either need to tighten something down a lot or loosen something, try to get yourself to where you're pulling on it rather than trying to push. So I've got all three bolts out. At this point, we're going to get the cover in place. We'll get all three bolts back in. I know I said all three bolts, but we really only need two for what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to get the front one in and tight so we can get the other bracket installed. We'll swap back to our 19. We'll take that bolt back out. We'll get our other bracket in. So I know I'm kind of blocking you out. You can't see it, but we're just sliding that bracket up. All right, now with this, same situation. TYM does not give you a specific torque spec for any of these bolts. From the dealer that I talked with, these rear ones should be at 75 foot-pounds, and the front larger one will be at 120 foot-pounds. These bolts are prone to loosening on every manufacturer tractor because it has such a stressful job of holding this in place, which is what holds your entire loader in place. So those are something you want to check every 50 hours or so if you can. Just throw a wrench on those and just make sure that they're good and tight, not backing out. A lot of people have issues with them starting to back out. Okay, so we're all set with our engine side protector, our hose cover, and our fuel tank guard. We're going to go to the other side and we're going to install the engine side guard on the other side of the tractor. So we'll go around and we'll show you that next. So I removed the bolts and installed the cover and started tightening the bolts down, and then we found out the camera wasn't recording. But the process is the exact same. You've got the same two 19 millimeter and you've got the same 21 millimeter, I think it was, 22 millimeter. So you've got the same bolts, same torque specs, exact same procedure. Take them out, put them in, and then this side is almost done. If you look up here, there's two holes. So we have another plate here that we can attach to. So when we get those tightened up, we'll go ahead and open the hood, and then we're going to drill out these two holes right here, and then we're going to install some bolts there too. Now, before this tractor goes back to the customer, we'll have this thing back down at the shop, and we will hit all of these bolts with a torque wrench. So next, we're going to pop the hood on this. We'll get that opened up, and then we're going to drill out these two holes right there and get those bolts put in. So I'm going to start this tractor up. I'm going to lift the loader up in the air some just to give me a little bit more clearance here. And then we'll fold the guard forward and open the hood. Okay, so we have a T494, T574 hydraulic valve cover. There's a bunch of parts and pieces. Let's talk about it, figure out what's what. So we're going to start off with this. This is going to be pretty simple. This is going to be our base. So this is the bottom of the entire assembly. So everything's going to be built up off of this base. We can take this part and this part and set these off to the side for now. We'll talk about those in a minute. Same with this part. So we'll set this off to the side. So we're going to start things right off with the main cover. So this is going to go right there, and we're going to bolt those two pieces together. So leave the camera rolling. I'll throw these bolts in. We'll be right back in a second. So we've got those bolts all in. Before we get them fully tightened down, I want to add another piece to this puzzle. So this is the rear cover, and this is going to bolt in right here. So we'll get those bolts in, and we'll get all of them tightened down. So now that I've got all those together, I'm going to run through with my cordless impact and my Allen wrench and just snug them all up. Okay, now that those are together, we're going to talk about this big hole in the side and what it's for. So this is going to go on the front of this. So that isn't what we need at the moment. So we're going to set this off to the side. Now we have two options here. We recently had to redesign this for like the 17th time, just some minor changes that TYM has made. And yeah, so with this hole is for the WR long third function valve. If you have a WR long third function valve, you are going to want to install this. You can see we've got some slots around the outside of the hole, and we have a cover. This cover would go on here, and you'd want to kind of test fit it on your tractor, take the step off, put the cover on, find where you need it. Depending on the age of the tractor, you'll either need to slide this back or slide this forward in order to fit around the valve properly. So this tractor is outfitted with an OEM third function. We're just going to be installing a block off cover. So this cover will go right here. So I'm going to do that. Now that that cover is installed, we are now good to take this over to the tractor. And we're going to be bringing this and this with us, as well as a little bit of hardware. And we're going to get this all put together over there. So I will see you there. So we are over here at the tractor. The first step is going to be to find the socket for this, which so happens to be 19 millimeter. Okay. So you're going to want to take this bolt out. It is loose. We've had this cover on once already. So we're just going to take this bolt out all the way. And then this cover goes on. This is kind of the front of the protection cover. So this is going to go on. It's going to come up inside of here and hook that. And then that bolt is going to go right back into place. Now that this is in place, we're going to go ahead and take our step off. We're going to get our cover up and fit it into place as well. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the fuel tank. It's going to sit right down into here. It'll make putting this together a lot easier. So we're not going to worry about these 2 bolts or these 3 bolts here on this side. Those all you have access to from this hole once it's installed. So all we're really worried about right now is getting this cover up and into place. So I like to, on this one, because it's a little bit easier, I like to put the front bolt in to this cover. That'll kind of hold it in place. And then I'll put the rear bolt in through the step and then through the cover. And it kind of holds itself. Once that's together, I'll take this front bolt back out. I'm going to slide the step up. Kind of get that all together and wiggle that bolt right back into place. Let's get our middle bolt in. So it's worth noting, this bolt's extremely long because the nut is way back in there. So there's a void in between where you go through and where the nut is. So you just kind of have to put the bolt in and then feel around for it to kind of snap in place into the nut. And then you know you're in the nut, you're not just trying to twist it sideways in the hole. So I like to tighten those down some, but I don't like to go too much. This is a little bit too much. So I like it to have a little bit of wiggle room. I'm gonna grab a rag and clean this up a little bit, and then we're gonna get these 3 bolts in, and then we're gonna talk about our last piece. Okay, so I've wiped down this cover, and I've now got some bolts. So these bolts are gonna mount these 2 pieces together. So this tractor has the OEM third function. You got 2 lines right up here. 99% of dealers, when they install them pointing straight out the side. Now, as you can see, on this tractor, they're not pointing straight out the side. So what you can do is you can loosen the fittings, and then you can rotate the fittings around and then hook them back up. So you can get them tucked in behind the valve and under the valve, rather than sticking way out the side and sending your third function hoses out here. A couple things. One, just doing that without a cover is going to give you more protection. And then 2, it'll actually allow our cover to fit, because if you don't move those third function lines, it won't fit. Now, those are you with a WR long valve, that's going to be mounted right here. So that's where that box is going to go. It's kind of like right there. So the step gives a little bit of protection of the WR long valve, but not very much. I mean, talk to people pretty frequently that they knock the valve off the side of their tractor. So let's get back to installing these bolts. Little trick if you haven't done much installing of hardware down in a hole like that is hold the nut like this in between your fingers. When you get the nut down to the bolt, you can push against it with your finger right here and just slide the nut onto the bolt, and then you can usually spin it on. Okay, those are installed. So now that I've got the nuts on those 3 bolts, like I said, they're serrated nuts, so they'll hold themselves. You just put a finger on it, and you can go ahead and get your Allen wrench and tighten those down. We have a few more bolts to tighten yet, but before we do, let's talk about this cover. So this is a block off plate. It is designed to go right here on this tractor, right there. But depending on the year of your 574, these hydraulic hoses won't have this quick coupler right here, and instead they're going to have a quick coupler down in here, and then the hoses are going to come out at a 90-degree angle instead of coming straight out the front. So in that instance, this block-off plate is going to go on the front of this cover. But because this has got the hoses coming out the front, the plate will go this way, and we'll just drop the bolts in. We'll reach in there, put the nuts on, and then we can finish tightening this cover all down. That bolt looks intimidating to get to, but it's actually pretty easy, just coming through the side right here. Okay, those are in place. I'm going to slide this forward just a little bit, kind of get that all to line up nicely. We're going to take our Allen wrench, same thing. We'll put a finger on the nut to hold it in place. Okay, we have a socket for this bolt in here. Before I tighten this bolt, I'm actually going to take it apart because when I put it together, I did not put the lock washer in the correct spot. I'm going to pop that bolt out, take our lock washer off, and put it back in. So I'm going to grab a crescent wrench to reach in there and just hold on to that bolt head. That is good and tight. And the last thing we need to do is just fully tighten these 3 step bolts. So the torque spec on these is 50 foot-pounds, but that is it. This cover is fully installed. Like I said, if you have the WR long version, you're going to put the box right here instead of the flat block-off plate. If you have our skid plate, there is 2 holes, slotted holes in the base of this cover that attach to the skid plate. So you'll want to do that during this process. But that is it for this cover. It is now installed, and the hydraulic system is very well protected compared to how it was. So that's going to be it for this tractor. As far as the protection package, now we are going to do a chainsaw carrier install on this, so that'll be a little bonus bit at the end of this, but it's going to be real short and sweet. But as far as the protection package on this tractor, it's pretty straightforward to install. Anybody can do it. There isn't a ton of tools that are required. There's very minimal drilling. You saw you have to drill the front guard, you have to drill a couple holes over here on the side. But other than that, there's no other drilling. So it's a pretty relatively easy thing to put on in a couple hours by yourself even. But all we need to do is this comes assembled just like this out of the package, and we'll install these bolts. So I'm going to pull all of these up into place, and you kind of give them a little tug and they'll stay and they're locked up in place, and then you'll just spin the nuts off. Careful not to push them down. And then our quick attach plate is going to mount with the hook sides facing down. So it's going to mount right on here. If you had the optional chain box, the chain box is going to bolt onto there first, and then the quick attach plate is going to bolt onto the chain box. But since we don't, so not to let them drop, and I did. So let's use the knife just to prevent that from falling down. So it is a carriage bolt that's in there. So there's that little square head that engages with the backing plate of the chainsaw carrier. Once the nuts are on, they can't fall down anymore. One thing you will want to pay attention to is when you go to tighten this, that little square is fully engaged. Otherwise, it'll impede the chainsaw from sliding in. So that's a quick way to throw that on. Now that this carrier is done, we've got our loader mount over here. Now I did already install this. So this was pre-installed before coming out here, but this loader mount just mounts with this U-bolt. And then our locking plate will drop into it right here. Watch your fingers. Once the plate is there, you take your pin, come in and across, and the pin will snap into place. And then this will not come off, and it gives you a really strong, secure place to carry your chainsaw with a lifetime warranty. So that's really about it for a Sawboss install. Really simple. Throw the loader mount on with the U-bolt. Once that's in place, bolt the quick attach plate to the chainsaw carrier or to the chain box, then the chain box to the chainsaw carrier, depending on what you had ordered. And then drop it into place, put your pin in, and this is now done and ready to be used. So you can throw a chainsaw in this thing and go right to work with it. So if you're looking for a tractor to work in the woods with a good lift capacity, fully mechanical engine, and just a real stout machine, this is a great option. And this outfitted with our protection package makes one of the toughest tractors available for doing that kind of work. So thanks for checking it out. And if you have any questions, you can give us a call 315-335-5421. Thanks.